to Beyond the Ring, a podcast that covers all things in the stock show industry from the informative to the insane, starring Ryan Rash.
A lot of people are developing personalities during Mrs. Rona quarantine. I currently have 8.
And Dale Hummel.
I want my name to come up when the gay goes to therapy.
Now on with the show.
Welcome to Beyond the Ring. This is Dale Hummel alongside co-star Ryan Rash.
Hello, hello, hello.
Girl, we have a problem.
Yes, you have lots of problems. I'm well aware.
We have very specific problems that we need to address today.
China!
It does involve China. A while back, Ryan and I decided to order some Beyond the Ring gear, and we went through the process, and the vendor was talking about having some difficulties with COVID-19 and the supply chain and all those things, but eventually we were able to get some of the gear in, not all of it. And in the process, I was going to set up an online store here the last couple of days, and I went through the inventory, and I took a moment to read the tags, Ryan. And there is a item that does mention something that we're not very proud of.
I'm well aware that you probably ordered your gear from China.
I ordered from a vendor that indirectly did end up with some China gear. Now the problem is, do we burn it or do we sell it and just don't do it again?
That is all you. I am just here to live in your world, Dale. I mean, I feel so privileged that once a week I get to live in your world. So whatever you want to do with the gear in China, if you do burn it, please have one of your children snap it for us. It would be great for social media.
While we're speaking about the Beyond the Ring gear store, we are live. It's actually up on Shopify, and you can go to the beyondthering.com website. We'll be posting on Facebook the web address as well as a Shopify address, I believe. So you can go there for any of your Beyond the Ring gear needs. We're pretty excited about that. Next, we do have a few current events to discuss. Ryan, did you have any idea that 73% of the American public currently disapproves of the path China is taking?
Well, that is because of you, Dale.
I think you and I both have helped that a little bit. We're hoping we moved at 8%.
I think it's all you and your wisdom on how China has been raping us for years and all the things that they're doing. I am still very, very upset that because of your assault on China, TikTok hot cops may be homeless now because Trump is thinking of taking TikTok away even more. But I guess for the greater good, I can survive.
It looks like Microsoft has 45 days as of this week to sell to Microsoft, and then your TikTok hot cops will remain.
Microsoft, if you're listening, help the world out here, okay?
The other thing that was announced on ESPN or reported, NBA's kind of tangled into a mess with China.
No. We are not talking about anything sports related. No, I refuse because I didn't like sports to begin with. Now all these overpaid, egotistical maniacs, all they're going to do is kneel for the national anthem. It's not just one of them like that colic Afro, whatever. It's all of them now. All of them.
And I do not approve of that either. And
don't watch the sports. Turn off the ESPN of it all.
Okay, can we talk about the FBI warning that China is trying to already interfere with the fall election?
What?
My assumption is they're not Trump fans. I could be wrong, but that's my assumption.
This is new to me. I did not see this.
Yeah, no, that was just up here recently, and I don't have any details on it, but it doesn't surprise me. Nothing surprises me on that. Let's go on to a different topic, and we have picked on China probably enough. What about the fact of the no debate? Remember, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and it deeply concerned you.
No, we're not doing this, Dale. You have your world, and when I bring up stuff that does not fit into your world, then you just tell me that it doesn't exist. Where there are going to be debates. That's just all there is to it. If there are not any debates, then the independents better figure it out and vote for Trump.
I hope that's the case. And there's still Biden's coming out saying he's going to debate, but we've got several of the media institutions pushing for no debate. The New Yorker Public says, let's cancel presidential debates forever. All they do is help out cable news. New York Times, let's scrap the presidential debate. CNN, political analysis, make a plea for Biden not to debate Trump.
Well,
Newsweek,
that's because that was Clinton's press secretary.
yes, it was. And I think they're coming out and saying we're ahead. We can't do this. I'm worried that they won't take COVID-19 as the out, but rather they're going to say we can't debate Trump because he's going to stand up there and not give accurate facts or lie.
I have to interject this. Hillary Clinton called Trump a liar the whole time, and she still debated him 3 times. So that does not work.
I agree. The first 2 debates have been canceled. I believe the first one was scheduled at Notre Dame, and they've pulled out over COVID concerns. Second one was University of Michigan, pulled out over COVID concerns, and they're trying to reschedule those. As of right now, the only date that I could come up with is October 22nd at Belmont University in Nashville as the 3rd and final debate, but nothing as far as a concrete first 2 debates. But I so hope it happens, but I am very, very concerned that they're going to do anything and everything to avoid the debate.
So you're telling me they've already canceled 2 of them?
That was not necessarily, I don't know. The reason that Notre Dame and the University of Michigan gave was because of COVID concerns. Official response was that anyway. So yeah, they didn't cancel them. They just said you can't host it here. So they were going to look for a replacement. I believe the second one, they're trying to head to Miami to reschedule.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Right there in the middle of all Rona hotbed nonsense. Okay, let me make this real simple here. Again, if anybody in the Trump campaign is listening, all you need is to bring Sleepy Creepy Senile Joe out of his basement. Let him come to the White House. It takes 1 Trump, 1 Sleepy Creepy Senile Joe, 1 man from, of course, they're going to have to use somebody from CNN, and 1 cameraman. It's 4 people. That's it. That's all it takes. You don't have to have an audience. You don't have to have none of this stuff. That's it.
And I think they're aware that argument's going to come out. So that's why I think they're going to take the other side, that you can't debate Trump because he's not going to tell the truth. That's the angle they're going to take.
And that angle does not work because Hillary did it.
Agreed. I hope you are correct. I hope it happens because I think it'll be an impressive sight to watch that.
They just mad that he's not going to be able to talk because he can't speak anyway. And Trump will literally eat him alive. But whatever. You get my blood pressure up.
How about something really, really appealing? Homicide numbers for 2020. Chicago.
Oh yeah, that's positive and uplifting for sure.
Chicago's at 433 so far this year. Philadelphia 243 and New York City 212. Chicago nearly doubles any other city in the U.S. Recently, a 9-year-old just killed in Chicago this week. Stray bullet. It just, kudos go out to Beetlejuice Lightfoot in Chicago.
That is your sister, Beetlejuice Lightfoot, for sure.
She is on top of the charts. In all seriousness, it's sad that ignorance is contributing to children being killed by stray bullets. And I don't know what else.
And none of it's on the media.
No, very, very little is being showed up, or it has shown up on the media, and it's getting worse everywhere, but Chicago is really, really bad.
I saw something this morning or yesterday morning that the last month has been Portland's deadliest month in history.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all revolves around that when the police don't have support, they're defunding and just that general mental state, it just gives these thugs a green light and they're not worried about it.
I have no words for all that. And still the fact, like, the one thing that, like, I don't get is a couple of weeks ago, Trump said he had these plans and he was going to do all this stuff and all that went by the wayside. Like, where was that? What happened?
Well, we're seeing some federal agents out there, but not storming in and taking over. I think he's waiting for the cities to invite him in. And technically, I think without martial law, that does need to happen. They can go protect federal.
So all these innocent people can die.
That is how it is. That goes back. That goes on the shoulders of that mayor and possibly here in Illinois, possibly the governor. But yeah, that's kind of how it seems to be working.
Well, let me tell you the funniest thing that I have got to see about your Democratic Party that you love so much. So Obama sent out his list of endorsements today Guess who's not on that list?
Who would that be?
AOC, the queen of the liberals. He does not endorse her.
Has she been hard on the Obamas by any chance? I don't remember.
Does she know who the Obamas are, first off?
I don't know.
So the single biggest news-making person in the party, Obama says, no endorsement for you, ma'am.
Is Vice President Biden not using her as one of his consultants on, I believe, the green movement or the environment?
He put her in charge of all environmental issues when he wins.
Can you imagine what that would do to the energy industry in this country? It's over. It's done. It's just over. Texas doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, I just think the fact that Obama, who is literally still basically the Democratic leader, even though Joe Biden's going to be their presidential nominee, he won't even endorse that woman. Does that tell you how freaking dumb she is?
It tells me that he's very much afraid of her having that much publicity within the party.
But this is only going to give her more publicity that he didn't endorse her.
That's possible.
Oh.
I just don't know how far. I think the following of Obama is very strong within the party. So I think it'll actually damage her, even though it's bringing more attention to her.
Oh, I don't know.
Let's go on to something more positive. I have something really positive.
Oh, okay.
Ryan, have you noticed there are more shark attacks on the news than usual?
Yeah, because nobody has been swimming and the sharks are hungry.
Is that it?
That's because Newsom closed the beaches. Way to go, Newsom. Now you're killing people with the sharks.
Well, to me, this is a great example of how the media can push a narrative any direction they so choose. Because if we actually look at the statistics from January through July of 2019, compare those to January through July of 2020, there have been exactly half the shark attacks here in the U.S. that we had last year during the same time. But if we were to watch the news, you would think that it's out of control.
I'm just telling you, if Gavin Newsom wanted to close the beaches, the sharks just wouldn't be as hungry.
They wouldn't be there. What about maybe we ought to do a little cage diving? We've talked about that. I did some searching on that. We're either South Africa or Australia if we ever get opened back up to do any of that.
We can't go to none of those places. They don't want us.
Eventually. And you know, another interesting fact while I was doing a little bit of shark research looking for cage diving spots.
Shark Week is next week. You do realize
Shark Week is every week.
No.
Yes.
The official Shark Week is next week.
I don't know if I believe that.
August 9th. Starts August 9th.
Got it. You have it ready to record. You're good to go.
I love the Shark Week.
Did you know that I saw some research while looking at the sharks that it is okay? It's stated now that it's okay to pee in the ocean. This was an actual research project of some sort.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It was given out. The American Chemical Society says it's okay to pee in the ocean as the nitrogen in the pee will mix with the ocean water to form ammonium. That in turn becomes a source of food for plant life. So in this situation,
oh sweet mother of Moses,
the gay needs to pee in the ocean to show his support for AOC and the green movement. Get on it.
And then I'll get eaten by a shark. It'll be great.
Yep, all of those factors coming into play. The other thing that we were going to visit about, and I meant to last week, is Ryan and I have been approached in terms of advertising and maybe why we haven't had any advertising on the Beyond the Ring podcast at this point. Initially, we had set it up and wanted to get our feet in the ground and make sure this is something we want to do week in and out that would work into our schedules. And amazing the response we've had. I believe, at least speaking for myself, it's been very enjoyable. The sponsors that we've had, the listeners that we've had contact us, has all been very, very positive. I believe we will go ahead and open that up to some advertising, even though it'll be somewhat limited. But if anybody wants to be involved in that, you're more than welcome to contact Ryan or I, or shoot an instant message on Facebook, and we'll go down that path here in the very, very near future.
Mr. Advertising.
We've avoided it, and in all reality, Ryan and I probably would survive just fine without bringing advertising in. But I think it's probably at a point that if we can relate to that sponsor on a personal level, maybe it's something we can work into these episodes, and it'll be a positive thing.
I just want anybody out there listening to know that all the money goes to Dale, so this will not affect my integrity in a show ring. Because I ain't seen a dime from any of this stuff.
That's because we've had no advertising, and I'll make sure that you don't see any, because we'd hate to have you influenced in any manner.
Dale's going to keep all the money for himself, so I know how this works.
Exactly. Well, with that said, thank you to all those listeners out there that have taken the time to listen to each episode, and Ryan and I truly appreciate the support, and we're looking forward to doing many, many more.
I think the only reason these people listen is because of our current events section, and you have failed to mention something very, very important, sir. You're bad this week. Bad, Dale Hummel. Bad.
Is it a positive?
No. Have you watched the news? There's nothing positive.
We're trying to be less negative. That's the goal.
You think shark attacks are positive, okay?
No, the fact there's only half as many attacks this year as last year is positive.
Oh, Lord. The mail-in ballot nonsense has got to stop.
It's not good. And in my uneducated opinion, if it's the mail-in ballots goes through, from what we've seen in the past, when they mail out those ballots and there's no verification, there's nothing more than a big old gaping hole saying corruption, corruption, corruption. It would be a train wreck. It'll be in the courts for years. I don't know what would happen. I don't even know how they would ever settle it.
I don't know, but Trump has threatened legal action against Nevada because they just pushed some bill through to do mail-in ballots, and it's not good. It's not good. Do you know how many dead Democrats will vote?
I think you're going to have dead Democrats. It's not physically possible. You could not set up a system between now and then, no matter who is in charge of it, send it through the U.S. Postal Service, have them return those, and make it work. Not to mention there's zero verification of anything.
Oh, I can't. Anyhow, so I am going to go on to something positive, because you say that we have to have positive things. So this week, Show Pig Connection made a very funny meme of me and my judging sayings, and it was really, really funny. And so I didn't know who made it, but then you figured it out. But anyway, thank you to Show Pig Connection for making a decent meme about me. I much preferred it to all the Joe Exotic ones that I got made at the beginning of Rona. So
now I did like this one, but the Joe Exotics were good. They were entertaining.
Right. Uh-huh.
I do have something really exciting to go into, and that's our actual episode content. And today we have Dr. Scott Greiner with us. For many of you out there, little introductions needed to Scott in the judging world. However, I think we can maybe go a bit deeper into his bio, because I'm sure a lot of people may not be aware of Scott's background all the way back to his 4-H days. But Scott was a native of eastern Iowa, where he grew up on a diversified family livestock farm, active in 4-H, but limited in terms of competitive livestock judging. However, that changed dramatically when Scott showed up in Ames, Iowa, to attend Iowa State University. Scott was a member of the Reserve National Champion Meets team, a member of the National Champion Livestock team, where he was the high individual himself, as well as the second high individual at both Houston and Denver. Scott was coached by Dave Duello on the livestock side and Dr. Skaggs on the meat animal evaluation portion. Post-graduation, Scott went on to Michigan State University, where he worked alongside legends such as Harlan Ritchie, Dave Hawkins, and Maynard Hoberg. After receiving his master's at Michigan State University, Scott chose to pursue a PhD back at Iowa State University, where he was the coach of 2 national champion teams. And in 1998, Dr. Greiner took a position with Virginia Tech, working primarily with the livestock producers across the state of Virginia. Scott, along with his wife, Lori, have 2 daughters. One that's going to be a senior at Texas A&M, the other starting her freshman year this fall at Iowa State University. Scott has been a proud show dad for many years, but those days and years are quickly coming to an end. Dr. Greiner had the privilege to judge in 35 states and Costa Rica, including county fairs in the middle of nowhere to the national shows across the country. Scott, we sincerely welcome you to Beyond the Ring.
Well, thank you, Dale and Ryan, and I appreciate the opportunity to join you guys today. And have enjoyed listening to your podcasts and the guests that you've had and your discussion, and look forward to our interaction today. So thanks for having me.
You're welcome. We're excited about it. And Ryan, to set the stage a bit, I would like you to explain how your fellow Texans are the most appreciative of when people like Scott come into the state of Texas to judge, and they know exactly kind of what to haul to him. Explain a little bit about that. And I believe you've probably shown under Scott or had some of the people you've helped show under Scott anyway, but seems to be a little different in the state of Texas, where they do seem to be more concerned about what the judge is going to use, rather than whether they can predict the judge rather than what type he's going to use. But give us a little insight from Texas on that side, Ryan.
There's absolutely a reason that Dr. Greiner has judged more Texas major shows in all species than anyone else, because he is consistent, and he always has been and always will be, I'm pretty sure. And as we've stated on here before, we get our judges normally announced in the spring before all the buying season. And so when you know that, and you have someone who is consistently over the years used the same type, had the same priorities and the same emphasis, then it is much easier to fit that judge. And so that is why he gets to judge as many times as he does, because not only is he honest and consistent, he works well with the kids, and we all greatly appreciate it. And that's why I don't know if he's ever... Have you judged a big one yet, Dr. Greiner?
No, I have not. Ryan.
But you've literally judged everything else. But I didn't think you had judged a pig one yet. But
the other three, correct. No, I have not been in the pig ring. I think it would be a blast to hang out in the pig ring. I'm not on here lobbying for that, but I'd like to hang out at the gate on the sidelines, and maybe that'd be a lot of fun.
I don't know how many times you've been down to Texas, Scott, but it's been quite a few. Can you share with us a little bit the basis on what you were selecting in the show ring, and how you actually can use some of the same principles across the species that you do judge?
I'll go back to a little bit about your introduction. And I'm very rooted in terms of the basics, and I'm an Iowa farm boy through and through, and grew up in production agriculture, and that includes, the commercial production of livestock. And ultimately, I'm very rooted in that, and so have a lot of experience in that, and as well as the show ring. But fundamentally for me, then I've always kind of prioritized what I'd call complete animals. I know that's a vague term, and it might be a boring term to some, but I like to put it all together. And fundamentally, I've always been a person. I kind of start, particularly in the market animals, I start with the terminal traits, and you guys have had discussions previously about those and composition and what do we call it. But, I think philosophically I've got a window, and I want those market animals to fit that compositional window. And that's where I start. And from there, we try and put as many bells and whistles on in terms of how they're made skeletally and how they're balanced, and some of those show ring appeal traits, you might say, and try and put as many of those together. But fundamentally, it kind of goes back to those terminal traits for me. And I guess I apply that pretty much across species, and I'm not alone in that or unique in that in any way. But fundamentally, I've kind of stuck with that. And I think you apply the same principles as we go in and sort one of those big steer shows and we step in the goat ring. Fundamentally, the principles are all the same, and it's the same in lambs. So pretty much try and balance and prioritize in the exact same fashion across species.
And I think that's well stated. And Ryan and I have both had the opportunity to watch you judge or sort multiple species, and it's a pleasure to do so. And I think that it's interesting when we talk about the show families up north, they're maybe not as tuned in to, okay, we're going to buy an animal to fit a specific judge. But we compare that to the Texas majors, when there's several majors a show family is going to go to, maybe all 5. They're buying several animals, many more on feed usually than what a family in the north is going to, and they can kind of shift and change and try to fit those animals to a specific judge. And Scott, I guess I'm curious, when you get that call from San Antonio or Houston or one of those show managers, do they ever explain to you, hey, we want to bring you in, it's the show families that want to get you here, we need some consistency, or they just call you up and say, hey, we need you to judge?
Well, My initial reaction is always yes, because have been very fortunate, as you mentioned, to have the opportunity to go to Texas a lot and have been well received and always enjoy it. So my first response is always yes, but I also appreciate, I recognize, and have been told lots of times that, and I'm not naive enough to think that everybody out there that's showing those exhibitors and their families, that might not be their favorite kind, is the kind that I like. But as you mentioned, they tell me I'm predictable. So I guess to me, I tend to interpret that as I try and apply those principles in a consistent manner, and I'm fair to every single exhibitor that walks through the gate. And apply them in the same fashion, and no matter who they are, they get applied, and I fit them where they need to be in my mind on that particular day. So it's always an honor to be asked to come to Texas. It's as it is any show, whether that's a county fair in the Midwest or in our part of the world. I approach them all the same, and each and every one of those is important, and it's just a great honor to get to do it.
Excellent. And I want to dig just a little bit deeper about your discussion on when you're judging a market show, whether it's goats, lambs, or cattle, and I'm sure even pigs, you want them to fit that window, and then we bring the bells and whistles in once they fit into that window of acceptability in terms of composition. Let's just use steers for an example. When you say fit that window, I'm assuming in your mind, and I guess it would go back to my meat evaluation background, and I think you'd be on the same scale there, that you're thinking, okay, where does this fit in terms of a quality grade or a yield grade or fit into the industry? Or does that even go through your mind? Or what is that window?
No, I think that's absolutely right. I guess I approach it from the standpoint of, ultimately these are terminal meat animals, and that's their role in terms of our industry. And we as an industry we've got a window of acceptability, if you will, particularly, and we'll just use steers as the example, as you mentioned, Dale. I think, we want those steers to have the composition, and ultimately we measure that in the industry from a yield grade standpoint. And so their combination of fatness and market readiness, along with muscling at a particular weight, gives us that yield grade. So if we want to be specific, in an ideal world, those would be yield grade 2 cattle, and certainly we want to be very cognizant of those that are too far along in terms of that window. Specifically in cattle, that'd be a yield grade 4, or even maybe a high yield grade 3, which simply means they're too fat. So quality side, we'd like an ample amount of market readiness and finish that, with the right genetics and the right feeding program and the right management, they'd have a chance to reach choice. We're only seeing them for a short window of their life. We have no idea of the background or the genetics, and so predicting what they're going to do is a very challenging thing, and really we can't do it. But given the phenotype is all we can go with, and that's really what we're evaluating anyway from that standpoint. So, in an ideal world, they'd all fit that window, and realizing that window is quite big as well. If you look at the species, and there's a lot of variation in there, and certainly amongst the animals we evaluate, there's huge differences. So I don't want to give the impression I don't think it's a carcass show, but the carcass component or potential or those terminal traits are certainly very important, particularly as I approach it.
Talking about all the shows that you judge and stuff like that, Dr. Greiner, I guess one of the things that I find interesting is, as you see all these judges evolve and start out their careers and stuff like that, what are your thoughts on when they're starting out, some of them trying to, be more trendy and pick animals towards what they think the trends are going instead of just ones they like?
Well, I think, Ryan, that unquestionably there's trends within the livestock industry, whether you look at the show industry, we look at the commercial industry, all those things are evolving. So that's out there. But at the end of the day, I think one of the things that's really important, if we've got, folks interested and have the aspirations of judging major shows or even county fairs, I think one of the fundamentally most important things to do as a judge is to be well-grounded in what you like, what you think is important, and what you're going to emphasize. And I think basically it all comes back to that. In other words, when you step in that ring, and I think back as you guys called and discussed this, and I think about, major shows, and Ryan and Dale, you guys both do it as well, that those first time or twos, you get those calls and you have the opportunity to sort what we call as a big one. And there's certainly some expectations and some pressure there. And I remember when I was called and had the opportunity to do the Houston Steers for the first time, one of the things I did pretty quickly is I called some friends and that had done it. And probably the most important piece of advice that I got that I'd share is that when you step in there and started on that first day, you got to know what you want. You got to have a visual picture of what's ideal and do your best to find them and weigh those animals against what you think is ideal. And if you continue to do that, I think that's how you develop consistency. And that's where you don't sway from that over time in terms of a particular trend or a particular trait that maybe gets more emphasis now than it will on down the road. So kind of keep grounded in those fundamentals, know what's important, and know what you want most of all, and go find it.
And Scott, I'm curious, on that first time you judged Houston, I'm going to assume they already showing slicks at that time?
They were, correct, Dale.
And I can only imagine, and I was coaching it about that time, and we'd go down there and look at those steers at Houston and hair, and we talked about it in a previous episode from the year they went from hair to no hair just blew me away. I just couldn't even wrap my head around it. Tell me a little bit about maybe giving some of those that are in the north that haven't been down there to see that, and they get the opportunity to judge one of those slick shows in Texas. Was it a culture shock for you?
Well, I had, like you, Dale, I was coaching at the time or had previously coached. I was done coaching by the time I got the opportunity to do that. But so I had the good fortune of taking teams down there. And so had the opportunity to evaluate some slick steers through that process. So I wasn't completely naive. At the same time, putting 4 of them in a class is a lot different than having a ring full of them. And so it's not that I hadn't seen them, so I was aware of kind of what I was getting into. But at the same time, it did take some adjustment. And I'll never forget, they changed the breed order every year, I think. That first year I did it, they started with the British breeds, and we started with lightweight Herefords. And those were the early years of slick shearing, Ryan. So yeah, we got out of the gate and got that. We got through that, and then moved to some of the exotic or continental breeds, which had just a little more shape and maybe increased my comfort level just a little bit. But
I have always said since we started slick shearing steers that the Herefords and the Shorthorns should sue, literally sue, because I mean those 2 breeds with hair, especially back there in the early days. And I think, if I remember correctly, you were probably like the 4th person to judge the Houston Steer Show slick, if I remember exactly right. But I may be off here too. But man, the Herefords and the Shorthorns, dear Lord help them, it was bad. And you are right. Houston always rotates the breeds in and out every year. San Antonio has been... It's been the same. They changed about 5 or 6 years ago, but before that, it'd been the same way all the way through. And since they changed, when we moved to other color crossbred and red crossbred and black crossbred, that's when they changed the breed order up. But they've been the same all the way through. But I can't even imagine doing Houston for the first time and having to start out on lightweight Herefords. Lord. That was the test. After that, you were fine. I mean, if you can survive that, you can survive anything.
That's right. I lived to tell about it. And I don't recall how long the slick shear rule had been implemented. It was not the first or second year, but it was, like Ryan said, I'm sure it was 3, 4, or 5 years. And I did call a couple of the folks that had judged it previously, as I mentioned before, just to get their perspective and give me any tips of advice that they could provide, and I think that was helpful.
Now, and to be interesting, from 2000 until, I don't know what years are most recent that you've sorted some of the slick calves at the majors, but you've done them many times. It appears to me, looking in completely from the outside, the progression in terms of what we're breeding, how we're feeding, how we're managing, huge leaps forward in terms of those slick calves.
Oh, it's been phenomenal. If you go back and Google that stuff and you look at the pictures over the last 2 decades, I guess it would be, how much those cattle have changed and improved and how much better they've gotten. It's incredible. And that's a huge testimony to, number one, the breeders that are designing the cattle, and number 2, the families and the exhibitors are doing a great job in terms of management and feeding and getting them shown. And it's a very interesting thing. And I'd encourage your listeners, if they've never done that, that's a great lesson in terms of livestock improvement, to go back and kind of look at that progression over time.
Absolutely spot on, because like I said on a previous podcast, the first year that we slick sheared, they didn't even tell us that we were going to slick shear till after everyone had validated their steers. So we had all bought, ones where hair quality was a big part of the selection process. And then they were like, okay, we're going to shave them off now. So that first year, it was rough. But as I've said on previous podcasts, the one thing that I know without a doubt that slick shearing has done is it has definitely made the quality of the animals as a whole much, much better in the state of Texas all the way through.
And Scott, some people will say here the last few years, and I don't know if you hear these things or not, but when we were just discussing with show families and whether I'm talking to them about goats or lambs or calves, and they say, well, Dr. Greiner's coming down to judge, and they'll talk about how we need to make sure that they have some muscle and hit that window that you've talked about. But there's a few of them that are maybe accusing you, I guess, of shifting towards a little better looking animal. What do you think about that?
That's an interesting question and comment, Dale. And honestly, I've been told or asked that from several folks over the last few years. And I've been pondering that a little bit, to be honest. And because I fundamentally and philosophically, I don't think I've shifted whatsoever in terms of how I approach things. And so I guess as I think about that question, and I actually did a little research, and not any formal research, but go back to our previous discussion. I mean, I went back and looked at those slick shear steers that we were using in the early days, and I dug up pictures on other fairs, whether it's mainly lambs and steers, and went back. And I mean, I remember those shows, and I remember how good I thought those stock were in their day and time, in terms of putting together those traits that we've talked about. And just, you walk away from that show 15 years ago and you say, man, that's one of the best ones I've ever seen. And I really think the best way I can answer that question is that I think the stock are that much better. I think we're doing that much better job breeding them, feeding them, and managing them, that they are just so good now, the really elite ones, that I think not only can they have that extra shot of muscle or stoutness that I tend to have a reputation for, but you don't have to give up structural integrity, and you don't have to give up the right kind of look and balance to make them a little extra stouter. There are ones out there that have all that. And so I credit the breeders and the feeders and the exhibitors for that, because I don't think I've shifted and all of a sudden I'm placing more priority on profile or balance and away from other traits.
No, I think that's exactly right. And it's just a compliment to those breeders and feeders down there. And I think we see it across species. We continue to make these animals better. And I, like you, if I think back, and we're aging ourselves a little bit, but even if we go back 20 years, what we were using at that point in time, and some of those individuals that you may have used for a champion, you think, wow, I mean, these are just right there. I'm not sure how we're going to make them any better. Fast forward, all of a sudden they're here and they're better. And it's amazing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And because, as I mentioned, you look at some of those pictures from several years ago, and there's no question those were high quality livestock. And I think that's true. I'm your guest today, but I'm not the only one that I think would fit into that category. You go look at the history of showing livestock, and you look where we've come, and for sure there's been some change in terms of trends and type of animal, if you will. But at the same time, I think the overall quality in terms of a balance of those traits that we tend to prioritize across the board and how they put those together has just been phenomenal.
I think one thing that the listeners, especially the ones not from Texas, would find interesting is a bunch of people have this, I would say it's a delusion, but when you come to judge a slick sheared steer show, you have to judge it completely different than you would a haired steer show. And I don't see that at all. I don't understand how they how that thought process comes about, but I just think they would find your take on that, since you have done lots of major shows, whether they were haired or slick in terms of steers.
No, I'd agree with you, Ryan. I don't think any of us that have a number of both, I don't think we change whatsoever. I think the primary difference between the two is, the slick ones, what you see is what you get. And any little flaw that they have sticks out like a sore thumb. And in the haired shows, perhaps some of that hair can, I'll use the term disguise, or maybe not make some of those things quite so obvious. But I don't think from a judging and from a priority standpoint that anything changes. It's just kind of the aesthetics change a little bit.
See, I agree completely. And not just you, but several others that I have talked to that have done both, they all say the same thing. So I find that myth that's out there to be, really interesting, that people actually think that a judge changes type and kind or what they look for because one's got fluffy cow syndrome and the other one is hairless. But one thing that a lot of those listeners know, and maybe some of them don't, but you are actually the one who runs and manages and puts together the North American Senior College Livestock Judging Contest, which is, of course, the national contest for those teams. And so tell us how you came into that and how that started for you, and a little bit of, I'm sure it is a huge, huge time-consuming undertaking when it gets, some of it's year-round, but especially the closer it gets to that.
Right. Dale provided a little bit of my background, and historically the contest at Louisville has had very close ties with Michigan State and with folks, including myself, which have got some ties and relationship with that institution. And that all goes back to when the North American started in Louisville at the conclusion of the Chicago days. And Harlan Ritchie was actually the first superintendent and started the judging contest at Louisville before it became the national contest back in the 70s. So I finished up coaching at Iowa State and then moved out here to my faculty role at Virginia Tech. And I was an official for a couple of years. And then they asked me to come assist with the contest and help put together classes and pick out classes kind of across species and help kind of manage things. And at the time, Dr. Hawkins was superintendent, and he decided that he retired from Michigan State and asked if I'd take the lead role as superintendent, which I gladly accepted because it's a great privilege to get to do that. You guys have talked on previous podcasts about the importance of the livestock judging experience and what it's done for so many of us. And I wouldn't be talking to you today on this broadcast if it wasn't because of it. And so it's a great opportunity for me to give a little bit back to a program that has meant so much to me and to so many others. I've got a great team. Steve Spivey from Illinois, who I know Dale knows well, has been associated with the contest since it started in Louisville, and he's the director of operations. And plain and simple, he's the brains that makes it all happen and does all the logistics behind the scenes. And there's a great team of folks, from several folks that help pick out classes to a variety of volunteers that come in and help us with the operation of the contest itself. And, of course, great support from the North American in terms of their interest in the program and what it means to so many. And then, of course, we've got a tremendous amount of supporters on the awards side to make that annual banquet a pretty special event.
No, and Scott, the time and effort that you put into that, and Ryan and I and yourself have all gone through that, and you and I have coached many teams through that particular contest, whether the 4-H, the junior college, and the senior college, but specifically that senior college event being the national contest, the culmination of whenever they started their 4-H judging through their collegiate judging and finalizing there. It's hard to even, for people that haven't been directly involved in it, to wrap their head around just how many hours and how many people have put forth so much effort to get that one individual or that team to that point. The fact that you've gone through that process and you get it from every angle and keep it as prestigious as it is, I appreciate it. It's overwhelming.
Well, thanks. It's like I said, there's lots of folks involved, and I'm happy to be a part of a really great team that makes that happen annually, and lots of folks that have done it previously. I think back to the days or the year I judged, and a different set of faces were kind of the contest administration, if you will. But we've tried our very hardest to, number one, maintain the great history of that event. We try and do that and impress upon that as the students. And we kind of have that's an annual part of the banquet to share with them how livestock judging has evolved since its inception. And particularly, the days of Chicago and some of the awards that continue to be traveling awards, whether that's the Spore Trophy or some of the others. What's the history behind those, and you think about that and how far back that goes. It's a little hard to grasp at times, but then start sharing with folks the individual names and teams and most importantly what those folks have gone on to do in terms of the industry and where they're at today, and honor the team that won 10 years ago and the team that won 40 years ago, always makes for a very special event. So we work really hard to maintain that legacy and that history, and at the same time, try and keep things as current as we can and make it the very best event possible from an educational standpoint for the students that are competing now.
No, and that tradition is really hits close to home with me. Unfortunately, I've been visiting with my daughter. She's going to be a sophomore in junior college and was planning on going into the North American contest. And I don't know, Scott, what you can share with us, but obviously with COVID-19, we're up in the air on some of these contests even taking place. And I'm sure it's been a little bit of a headache for you trying to prepare or not prepare what's going on this fall. Do you have any recent news on what's happening there?
Well, I can share that, we're in the planning stages, and as is the North American, and we're very hopeful. All of us are very hopeful that the North American can happen. And when that does, we're going to be prepared on the livestock judging contest side of things to adapt to whatever public health situation that we're asked to, or whatever rules and accommodations we need to make to comply with that. We will certainly do. And we've had some initial conference calls and some discussions about what some of those things might look like in terms of where we hold the contest and exactly how we do things, which may be a little outside what we might think is normal. But I'm very confident that regardless of what the public health situation is or what those guidelines might be, I'm very confident that we can accommodate those with the help of our friends at the North American and the facilities that we've got to work with there. And hopefully as universities get back in session and we get students back to campus, we'll learn more about what those universities in terms of students traveling and what some of the stipulations are going to be with that. So to answer your question, Dale, we're charging ahead and realize that come November that things are probably going to look a little bit different in terms of the logistics and how we apply things and how the contest operates. But hopefully in the grand scheme of things, we'll still have those principles in place and be able to host a contest and provide a great event for the students and all those involved.
And I think it's real simple. Whatever they put in place, if it's realistic, you adjust to it. And I think you feel the same way. I am concerned visiting with some of the coaches across the country, and I'm sure you've heard from some. I know the California schools, I believe the Oregon schools, some of those, even if there are contests to attend this fall, I don't believe the schools are going to be allowed to participate in some of those. And that's unfortunate because, as you just mentioned, I think the atmosphere and the whole COVID thing is going to continue to evolve and change, and it's probably going to go up and down on us, and we really don't know what it's going to be like in November. That's
right. And I've heard similar things that you have, Dale. And I think, truthfully, many universities don't know exactly where they stand as we talk on this podcast today. And students are just going to start coming back here over the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks. And so I think we'll learn a lot more here in the next month.
No, exactly. I'm gonna circle around just a little bit, and you touched on this earlier. There's a lot of young people out there just coming through the collegiate judging program, some maybe that are getting into the breeding side of things, and it doesn't matter what direction, I guess, they're coming from, that are just getting started judging some county shows and maybe a few jackpot shows here and there. Dr. Greiner, you've had a long success of judging shows, and one of the few that judge across species at the national shows, and you've been doing it for quite some time. What's some just general advice, and you touched on it earlier, how do we prepare these young people if they want to continue to do this long term? What can you give them for advice to better put them in a position to do so?
Well, that's a great question, Dale, and I'll be happy to provide my 2 cents worth on that. And thinking about it, I think there's 3 key things. And the first one goes back to a discussion that we had earlier, and that is being well-grounded and stick to what your ideal is and have a strong sense of exactly what you're looking for when you step in the ring. And that doesn't matter if it's a county fair, it doesn't matter the species, it doesn't matter the size or magnitude of the show. You have to have a clear understanding of exactly what you want and the principles that you're going to apply to get to that end point, and do that on a consistent basis, class in and class out all day long, regardless of what's brought in front of you or who brings it. And if you can do that, you'll very, very quickly establish some consistency in terms of how you apply your priorities and how you apply what your ideal is, and realizing that all of us that have ever judged a show recognize that the ideal one or the one you're really looking for may or may not walk in the gate, but it's a matter of finding the one that best fits the ideal and doing that on a consistent basis. So I'd say that's really, really important, and doing that consistently from show to show and class to class and day in and day out, and kind of developing that. The second part is there's no substitute for being accurate and honest. And so evaluate the stock, call them exactly like they are, the good, the bad, the indifferent. Communicate that effectively, the things that you like, the things you'd like to change, and fully explain why you placed them the way you did. And I guess I've found over time, and I'm not naive enough to think that everybody standing around agrees with what I do. In fact, I know better. But at the same time, if you call them exactly like they are, those families showing them, the people helping them, the exhibitors, they fully understand what they have. And they understand the pros and cons, the good and the bad. And if you point that out and prioritize differently and elect to place them wherever, at the end of the day, they're fine with that, particularly after they have a little time to reflect on it. So if you can do that consistently and be honest and accurate and convey that effectively, that'll take you a long ways. And then the third one is just simply integrity and how you conduct yourself, and conduct yourself professionally. And I think that's extremely important in the ring, no question. But I think the thing we have to remember is that your reputation, your integrity, and how you're viewed goes way outside the few hours that you stand in the ring sorting livestock. It happens all the time. It's when you're coming and going from the fair. It's who you talk to. It's what you do when you walk through the barn. It's what you post on social media. So do that with the utmost integrity and conduct yourself in a way that's very, very professional, because that all ties into your reputation, and ultimately what these shows want to hire is somebody that's honest, has the utmost integrity, and is going to do a good job. And to me, those are the kind of the keys to getting that done.
Everything that you hit on is very accurate and something that anybody that aspires to judge needs to listen to. But I think the 2 things that really resonate with me, and I tell this all the time to people that ask me similar questions, is being honest and being accurate will take you farther than anything else you can ever imagine. And that sounds simple, but it's just the truth. And so I'm glad that you brought that up, because I know that you always are those 2 things every single time you step into sort, no matter where it is. Question that I have for you is, in terms of whether it's putting on a judging contest or at, actually sorting a show, what is probably the funniest or the most interesting story that you could share with us?
Gosh, Ryan, there's several things that come to mind, and they're probably my memories are probably more vivid about the serious things. And I mean, the reason that I enjoy doing it so much, number one, it's fun. I really enjoy it. But at the end of the day, it's about, contributing and having the opportunity to play a small role in the livestock industry, and particularly the show industry. And really what that means is we're in the business of developing kids. And to play a role in that's a very important one, and something that I enjoy because it did a lot for me. It's done a lot for my daughters, and I see lots of families that I work with. But so to answer your question, the things that really resonate with me is when you get the email or you get a Facebook message or something, and it's 2 days after the show, and the family sends you an email about something that you did that you didn't even realize you did that made that kid and family's day, and how you were able to contribute to their positive experience. And it's not something that any of us necessarily do consciously or even remember. But I mean, those are the kinds of things that really resonate with me. And I can think of a story back, Ryan, in the early days I did several years ago when they first started the significant scholarship money with the heifer show at San Antonio. I don't remember when that was, but
I can tell you exactly the first year that they gave out scholarships in San Antonio. It was the year after I graduated high school.
But I recall I did that, and my recollection was that the champion and reserve heifer in each one of those breed shows got a significant scholarship. I don't even recall the breed, but there was I named the champion and reserve, and we went and took pictures, and I could tell something was going on that was kind of unique and special, and I didn't really know. And well, come to find out, the young man that had champion heifer was relatively young, and you could tell this family was quite serious and had done well before. It wasn't their first trot to the backdrop with a banner. The young lady that was reserve was a senior that was graduating. It's the first time that she had that opportunity. That young man that won gifted his scholarship to the young lady that was reserve. And I just thought that was incredible. I mean, to have that big a heart, and it says a lot about what we try and do in these youth livestock programs. That was a pretty special thing. And I can't begin to tell you names. I can't tell you the breed. And that's not probably pertinent to our discussion anyway, but
those times like that, Scott, they're just special. And I know I was visiting with Ryan. He just did a show down here this week in Iowa. And I think, Scott, you just went over to do the replacement show for the Ohio State Fair and the steers. And just think back to some of those times when you select that champion and they've put so much into it, and the emotions that come out. It's a great feeling. And those notes you get later in a couple days later in an email or a text or a phone call, that just how appreciative they are, or even a thank you card that shows up a week or two later. Those things mean a lot. It's really special.
That's right. And I think at the end of the day, and you guys have talked about this, the reason that we all do this and that we're so passionate about it is because we really enjoy working with young people and know the importance of the program and what it can do for young people, regardless of their measured success in terms of color of ribbon in the ring. All those young people benefit greatly. And I think we all try and approach that with that principle in mind, and try and conduct ourselves in and out of the ring so that those young people have that kind of experience, and the program can have the impact on them just like it has on so many of us.
Absolutely. And obviously with COVID, we've had some ups and downs and maybe a few more jackpot shows, but some of the traditional shows not happening. Let's hope they continue to move forward. And Scott and Ryan, I appreciate your time today, particularly Scott taking time out of his busy schedule to join Ryan and I. It's been enjoyable visiting with you, Dr. Greiner. Until next week, be safe.